Okay, let's talk about pre-calculus. And pre-calculus is a pretty challenging course. And what we're looking at right here is some mathematical stuff. I'm just calling it stuff because I'm not going to explain this right now. But this is some mathematical things that you would study in pre-calculus. Okay, and it's the name pre-calculus is very appropriate because you have to be successful and really understand all the topics in pre-calculus before you can really take on calculus. Okay, so if you have any intentions of, going off to college and doing anything, even it doesn't even have to be technical. You don't even have to be a engineer major or computer science major, or math major, whatnot. Even if you're a business major, finance major, you do have to take calculus. So we'll talk more about those of you who are considering should you take pre-calculus. I'm going to give you some suggestions on how to make that determination. We're also going to talk about when you should be taking pre-calculus, but I'm going to get into all of that in just one second. But first, let me quickly introduce myself. My name is John. I'm the founder of TabletClass Math. I'm also a middle and high school math teacher, and over several years, I've constructed what I like to believe is one of the best online math help programs there is. Now, that's a pretty bold statement. I'll let you be the judge of that. If you're interested, you can check out my math help program by following the link in the description of this video. But basically, I have 100 plus different math courses ranging from pre-algebra, algebra 1, geometry, algebra 2, and pre-calculus. This is my most recent course. I just launched it, so that's why I'm kind of doing this video. Anyways, if you need help with pre-calculus, like immediate help, I'm going to leave the link, direct link to my pre-calculus course in the description of this video as well. But beyond that, I also have many courses in the area of test preparation. So if you're studying for the GED, high set task, SAT, ACT, GRE, GMAT, ASVAB, AccuPlacer, ALEX exam, maybe a teacher certification exam, and many, many others, I have great test prep courses. So just go to my website, check out my full course catalog. If I don't have what you are looking for, drop me a line and I'll help you out the best I can. I also do a lot with homeschooling. So if you homeschool, I have a great homeschool learning system. Been working with homeschoolers for 15 plus years. And lastly, I help those of you, obviously, that are having a tough time in your current math courses. Now, if you're truly serious about wanting to learn math and be great at math, then you got to be serious about your notes. Now, if you watch other videos of mine, I stress notes because you're here to know a little bit about math, but I always want to stress what it really takes to be a great math student. Okay, we'll talk about the specifics of this, but if you don't have this note-taking business down, you're going to have a tough time. You definitely won't be able to really pass pre-calculus or any other kind of advanced math course. But bottom line is this, over decades of teaching math, it's apparent to me that those students who consistently take great math notes almost always do very well. And I would say that's an absolute requirement for anyone who's going to be taking pre-calculus because if you don't take great notes, right, there's just too much information coming at you. So you simply won't be able to to learn, keep up. And typically poor note taking starts off when you're in elementary school, middle school, and then kind of like in some basic high school courses. All the good stuff that I did way back in the good old 1980s. Believe me, I was not a great student because I was really interested in school. I went into the Marine Corps, did some other things in life. Then finally, after getting serious and disciplined, then I'm like, okay, you actually have to work to be a successful student. So you have to work on your notes. Okay, put away the cell phone and engage with what the teacher is saying, write everything down, and you're going to do very well. Now, in the meantime, as you improve in your notes, you can use my notes to study from. Those would include pre-algebra, algebra 1, geometry, algebra 2, and trigonometry. You can find the links to those notes in the description of this video. Now, by the way, I am going to be working on creating a set of pre-calculus notes, but if you are interested in pre-calculus help from me, you definitely just want to go to my pre-calculus course, which again, I'll leave the link in the description of this video. So in pre-calculus, you get to learn all kinds of cool stuff like this. This is actually the trigonometric form of a complex number. And so some of you might be like, what is that? And you're like, huh? The trigonometric form of a complex number? Yes. We have things like a plus bi, and we can write it like this, and then we kind of do all kinds of crazy advanced stuff. This is necessary, uh, concepts and topics to be successful in calculus. Now, let's take a look at kind of like a typical timeline for most students. So this is generally most people's high school. If you're kind of on a college prep track, it can kind of change, but this is pretty typical. So you start off at your ninth grade year, taking some sort of like Algebra 1 course. Now, again, this could be a little bit different than from what you're doing. And by the way, over the last, I would say, 10 years plus, some schools have some curriculum have combined Algebra 1 and geometry. So if you haven't taken these courses, separately like this, you're still getting the same information. Maybe that's the kind of better way for me to make this point. So you're going to learn your basic algebra. Of course, before that, in middle school, what have you taken? Well, you took pre-algebra. There again, there's a course with the pre in it because you need pre-algebra to be successful in Algebra 1. Algebra 1 is very, very important course because it really is setting the foundation for college prep math. Then you got to go on and take a full year of high school level geometry. And then you have to do Algebra 2. Okay, now for some of you that are curious about this is Algebra 2. Other names of other courses are similar. Algebra 2 could be like college algebra or intermediate algebra. This is typically like the community college version of Algebra 2. Sometimes they have a little trigonometry in here, but these courses are kind of closely aligned. Now, for most people, this is going to cover the majority of, like, let's say your high school graduation requirements. You don't even necessarily have to take Algebra 2. You could take other like business course, general math, et cetera, et cetera. But if you're on a college prep track, okay, these are typically the courses you're going to be taking. Now, for the most part, most students are going to be at Algebra 2 in their junior year, okay? Of course, again, there's always exceptions to this. That means that when you're a senior, you have a choice, okay? You can generally take, like, let's say, a stats class, all right? You could see I should stick with math and not spelling, but you could take like a statistics course, which is an option. But I would say that the vast majority of people, students, should be taking pre-calculus, okay? Especially if you're college bound, unless you absolutely know that you're not going to be, business major or any kind of science technology kind of major in college. Okay, most of you should take pre-calculus because you want to have that option open to take calculus as a freshman in college. Okay, so that's kind of the whole idea here. Now, some of you could take pre-calculus and then go to school and not take any math, but you just kind of want to have that as, just in case. That's fine too. But statistics is a great course as well. Okay. However, you can take statistics in college, but I really strongly suggest if you're not sure, which path you're going to go in college, and there's a chance that you'll, do some sort of technical major, even business or finance majors. Okay, you're going to have to take, for the most part, at least a semester of calculus. So don't close any options off. Don't close any windows, majors, by not taking, let's say, pre-calculus. I would just get this done if you have the chance to in high school, if you're even considering college. It just opens up more windows for you because you're going to need pre-calculus, obviously, to take calculus. Now, in college, calculus is typically broken up in like 3 semesters. So it's like calculus 1, 2, and 3. So you have like single variable calculus, multivariable calculus, and then get into more advanced calculus. So this would be like a year and a half worth of calculus. Now you could also be taking calculus as a senior in high school if you're doing calculus A, B, like your AP courses, which is excellent, which means that you were really accelerated. But the bottom line is this: we're focusing on pre-calculus. So when should you take it? Take it, I would obviously in high school, but take it if there's even the slightest chance that you might do a technical major. Okay, and if you're not sure between pre-calculus and statistics, I would take pre-calculus just in case. But this course is challenging, okay, even for the strongest of students, and you have to be very strong in Algebra 2. Now, I'm going to get into the specifics of pre-calculus here in a second, but let's talk about Algebra 1 real fast, okay? Now, in Algebra 1, what happens? Well, you kind of relearn a lot of the stuff you learned in pre-algebra, and then you learn new stuff. In Algebra 2, you kind of relearn all the stuff you learned in Algebra 1, and then you learn new stuff. In pre-calculus, you're going to have to kind of really know Algebra 2 really, really well, and you're going to be learning a lot of new stuff. So now let's take a look at some of the topics here. And I state this because if you didn't do strong in Algebra 2, you're going to have a very difficult time in pre-calculus. So if you are looking to take pre-calculus next as your next course and you're struggling in Algebra 2, you got to get this right, okay? Because if you finish Algebra 2 in a kind of like unsure way, you're really going to be probably in trouble in pre-calculus. So let's take a look at most pre-calculus courses, how they look, the topics, okay? And this is kind of off my course. And but again, most pre-calculus courses are going to have these particular topics. So let's go ahead and get into it. So this would be like your chapters 1, 2, 3, etc. So the first thing is most pre-calculus courses are going to start off with some sort of review, a couple of weeks, maybe a month, and you're going to be reviewing a lot of different things from Algebra 1 and Algebra 2, stuff that you should already know. Okay, these are prerequisites like solving different type of equations, graphing linear equations, absolute value functions, all this kind of good stuff. So kind of like your Algebra 1, let's put in an Algebra 2 stuff as well, all right? All the things that you should really, really have already mastered at this stage in the game. Then you're going to have a chapter, again, this is most pre-calculus courses, certainly mine, on functions and relations. Now, again, you should already know a lot about functions and relations. So you're going to cover the things that you should already know, plus you're going to be learning more advanced stuff, especially when we're considering studying domain and range, symmetry, odd and even functions, etc. Some of the stuff that you haven't gotten in Algebra 1 and Algebra 2, you're going to kind of extend your knowledge in functions and relations, okay? Now, after that, you'll typically there's a chapter on polynomial equations and rational functions, right? Polynomial and rational functions. And this is going to cover all the stuff about polynomials, again, that you should already know, like solving quadratic equations. But some of the advanced stuff you were doing in Algebra 2, like long division, synthetic division, rational root theorem, Descartes' rules of signs, fundamental theorem of algebra. There's a lot of stuff that goes into solving advanced polynomial equations. So you're going to get into this again. And then in terms of rational equations, you start covering a couple of things that you learned from Algebra 2, how to graph rational equations and deal with, excuse me, rational inequalities. Okay, this is something kind of new. Rational inequalities that typically is taught at the pre-calculus level. You might see some of these topics in Algebra 2. All right, so moving on, you'll have a chapter on logarithms and exponential functions. Now, this should be a total rehash from stuff that you've done from Algebra 2. So a lot of this is going to be a review from Algebra 2, okay? So if you did well in Algebra 2, some of the stuff you'll be like, okay, I already know a lot of this, and that is true, okay? All right, now, most pre-calculus courses break up trigonometry in about 3 chapters. Okay, so trigonometry is a huge part of pre-calculus, and it's a pretty advanced part. So you'll have one chapter typically on trigonometric functions. So this is all, your basic, how to work with SOHCAHTOA, TOA, but radians and how to evaluate trigonometric angles. You do a lot of work without a calculator. You also get into how to graph sine and cosine and cosecant and secant. So this is this first chapter here. Okay, there's still a lot to cover in this first chapter in trigonometry. Then you get into another chapter on identities and equations, trigonometric identities and equations. And there's a ton of identities, and a lot of students typically don't like this when you're studying trigonometry, but it's very, very important. You need to know trigonometric identities, okay? There's double angle identities, half angles, sum of difference, product and sum, fundamental identities, and then we're also going to learn how to solve trigonometric equations, okay? Then you get into a chapter about the applications of trigonometry. So this is pretty advanced stuff as well. So this is kind of like the stuff I was showing you in the beginning of this video, how to, well, let's start off with like polar equations, how to write a complex number into trigonometric form so we can find the powers and roots of that, de Moivre's theorem, vectors, parametric equations, polar equations, how to graph this stuff. This is a very involved chapter as well. So you're going to have at least three full chapters of trigonometry, okay? And it's going to be much more advanced trigonometry than what you're used to, like basic, SOHCAHTOA, TOA kind of stuff. This is going to be far, far beyond that, okay? And you need this stuff because in calculus, there's quite a bit of trigonometry. You're working with a lot of different trigonometric functions, and, you got to know this stuff. All right, so let's take a look at what we've already looked at. We're like, wow, that's a lot. Well, we still have a lot more to cover. All right, so then you're going to get into analytic geometry, which we call conic sections. So this is going to be the study of like parabolas, ellipses, hyperbolas. Let's see, what else do we got here? Circles, and then the translations of these guys. So this is a pretty involved chapter as well. And then you have another chapter on systems. Now, this is going to cover all the things that you should already know how to do. Okay, how to solve 2x2 systems, all that kind of good stuff. But you get into more with systems in this chapter. You get into solving 3-variable systems, non-linear systems. And then if you're lucky enough to have a course like mine that covers partial fractions, which I would say maybe half of pre-calculus courses cover, but this is very important as well. This is extremely, well, I got to watch my description here. This is very challenging, okay? Partial fraction problems can be very difficult, but you need to know how to do partial fractions in calculus, okay? So anyways, that's typically within this chapter. So this is a lot of stuff. You can see, this is a challenging course, no doubt about it. All right, so after that, you get into another chapter on matrices and determinants. This should be a full just review of what you learned in Algebra 2, how to obviously multiply matrices, find the determinants of a 3x3 matrix, Kramer's rule, inverse matrices, etc. Or inverse matrix. How to solve systems using matrices, etc. So again, a rehash, but you still, need to cover this. Just because you might have covered it in Algebra 2, like, why do we have to cover it again? Well, because just like in pre-algebra and Algebra 1, you're kind of recovering, you're building up, you kind of need to review and strengthen your skills on this. All right, so let's talk about the last chapter you typically find in a pre-calculus course, and that would be on sequencing, series, and probability. Now, some of you may have touched on this in Algebra 2, but you're going to get it again in pre-calculus. So this is arithmetic and geometric sequence and series, infinite geometric series. Let's see, what else we got here? Probability. This gets into like combinations and permutations and basic probability, mutual exclusive events, etc., etc. So this is a lot of stuff. And by the way, the binomial theorem is in here as well. Now, a lot of you out there, if you haven't taken pre-calculus, you have no idea what I'm talking about, right? Because you haven't taken, well, you've taken some of this material, like, okay, matrices and determinants. You probably may have taken some sequence and series, certainly have to have taken some systems, but you don't know what partial fractions are, pretty sure. Conic sections, you may have taken some of that in Algebra 2, but these are things that are going to be within your pre-calculus course. So this is a lot, okay? Every chapter is pretty challenging, okay? But you need to take this, all right? When you go on to calculus in college, all right, this is coming at you, big time, right? And even the strongest of students can get quickly overwhelmed, taking calculus because they're not ready for it, okay? So again, if you have to be strategic about where you're going in life. If you're going to college and if you want to consider majors that may involve you taking a more advanced math course, okay, you need to start thinking about that in high school, all right? You have to be thinking about, all right, what do I got to be doing? Well, you got to be building up your math skills one step at a time, okay? Because you're not going to do well in Algebra 2 if you haven't done reasonably well in Algebra 1. But here's the thing, there's always hope, right? So even if you struggled in Algebra 2 and you have to take pre-calculus or you're looking to take it, what do you have to do? Well, you have to get better at math. You're going to have to go back and do some review. And there's a number of different ways you can do that. You can get with your teacher and ask what they think, but probably the best way is to maybe use a program like mine. Uh, take a look at my Algebra 2 course, review it independently, take some initiative, especially if you are in between, let's say, a summer break. If you're taking pre-calculus and you have the summer, to kind of get ready for it, I would say definitely take advantage, okay? Do things that you don't have to do. Take the initiative and you can get yourself caught up, right? But if you just kind of rely on, well, all right, I wasn't that strong in Algebra 2, but I'll just kind of relearn it by taking the course. Well, that's a pretty big risk, okay? And certainly if you're not, already, strong academically in terms of your habits, strong note taker, study hard, do all the homework, et cetera, you may end up looking like this, all right? Because, pre-calculus, there's some topics in here that, that will just make even the strongest students go like, I have no idea. But listen, people have done this throughout, millions of people have taken pre-calculus successfully that probably thought that they couldn't. So you can do it as well, but it is a course that requires respect, okay, in terms of don't underestimate how challenging pre-calculus can be, okay, but it's extremely important as all the reasons we talked about. All right, so if you need help with pre-calculus, okay, I post a lot of advanced material on my YouTube channel, so you might want to consider subscribing. And by the way, if you like this video in some small way, please consider smashing the like button. But as I post more advanced material, like pre-calculus level material, you're going to need more help than that. So I would strongly suggest maybe checking out my pre-calculus course or looking for something else, okay, above and beyond, maybe what your current course offers, okay. But if you're in pre-calculus right now, you definitely need to be talking to your teacher, right? Be like, hey, teacher, help me out. What do I need to do? That's your first line of, defense against a poor grade, right? Like, take great notes, go on the initiative, talk to your teacher. But beyond that, find help, okay? And don't feel bad if you're having a tough time with this, because this is a tough math course. All right, so with that being said, I definitely wish you all the best in your mathematics adventures. Thank you for your time and have a great day.